This video is going through an example for type 1 and type 2 errors. Just to remind you, you should have looked at the PowerPoint that's on Blackboard prior to watching this video. Just so that we can remember a few things. Remember, type 1 error is the error of rejecting the null hypothesis when the null hypothesis is actually true. And then the type 2 error is failing to reject the null hypothesis when it's actually false. So those are the two types of errors you could make when you're doing your testing. And let's actually just go through this problem. So the manager of a fast food restaurant wants to reduce the proportion of drive-through customers who have to wait more than 2 minutes to receive their food once their order is placed. Based on store records, the proportion of customers who had to wait at least 2 minutes was 0.63. So I'm going to highlight that number. We know it's a proportion, as they say so. To reduce this, so I'm going to highlight that. The manager assigns an additional employee to assist with drive-through orders. During the next month, the manager will collect a random sample of drive-through times and test the following hypotheses. So it's always good to go ahead and actually write out what your two hypotheses are, what your null and what your alternative hypotheses are. So I know my null is just going to be equal to a value. So in this case, it's stated in the problem that our proportion is 63%. Our alternative, he wants to reduce the proportion, so it's going to be less than 0.63. Okay. And so those are two hypotheses. Let's go ahead and figure out what our type 1 error is. Type 1 is to reject the null when the null is actually true. So here he's going to believe, the manager's going to believe that the true proportion say P of customers who had to wait at least 2 minutes was reduced when it really stayed at 0.63. Okay. So the consequence of making this error is pretty much he hired an additional employee, but it actually hasn't made a difference. So if he believes that it has made a difference, he's going to keep on paying that additional employee. So the consequence for this error is the manager will pay for an additional employee when he or she is not actually effective in reducing the proportion. Alright. Now our type 2 error is when we will go ahead and actually fail to reject the null hypothesis when the null hypothesis is actually false. So in this case, the manager believes that the proportion, and I'm just going to use P, has stayed at 0.63 when it actually, or when it really has been reduced. Alright, so this is kind of the other way around. So we hired the additional employee, he doesn't think it's working, so most of the time they're not going to keep that employee around. So the consequence for this error is the restaurant won't have the additional employee working at the drive-thru so it won't be as efficient as it could be. Alright. And if you went to the PowerPoint, they have a few more examples of this. And so you can always go back to that to get a little bit more practice. At the bottom, suppose a manager decided to carry out this test using a sample of 250 orders and a significance level of 0.1. What is the probability of making a type 1 error? So let's talk about how would this look as a picture. So here's our normal curve here. Remember, type 1 is saying that P had been reduced when it actually had stayed at 0.63. So 63% is the true mean, and this is a one-tailed test because it's just saying less than 0.63. So that 0.1 significance level is actually really important because here is where that 0.1 is. Okay. So we would reject the null hypothesis if we had a sample that went beyond this dotted line. Okay. So probability of that sample going beyond this dotted line, we would go ahead and reject the null hypothesis. Anything from here over to the other end, we would fail to reject null hypothesis. So the reason why the probability of a type 1 error is equal to your alpha is because if 0.63 is actually truly the mean proportion, the true proportion, then we would reject only the samples that would be out here on this tail. Okay? And then the probability of this tail is that 0.1. So probability of type 1 error is equal to alpha, which is equal to 0.10. Alright, that's it for this video. You guys have a great day.